Hello everyone. So I'm making this video to talk about the word just. Now, it's not the word just as in justice. It's the word just as in, let's say, just do this, or you just had to do this, etc., etc. Now, the word just is an interesting word in the sense it is similar to the word deserve. So it's kind of a distorting word. It's a word that doesn't really make sense, but distort our thoughts. So it makes it harder to think clearly. It doesn't represent something real. It doesn't represent something tangible that we can touch. So one could say it's just a concept, but that's not helpful because there are things that are tangible. Let's say you can put it in a box, like a bottle, a duck, a car. It's objective. I mean, you can put it in a box. Then we have concepts, but not all concepts are useful and not all concepts are useless. So for example, let's say the concept of big or small. I mean, you cannot put big or small in a box, but it's a useful concept. You say this cat is bigger than that cat. But then we have some concepts that are useless because they only produce distortion. And this distortion makes it a lot harder to see, let's say, reality for what it is. It's like, because if you remember in the previous video, I discussed the idea that we have constantly this mental commentary. Now, there is nothing wrong with this mental commentary. So it's not like what some spiritual gurus say, that the mind has to go silent, the mind has to disappear, and blah, blah, blah. No, I mean, the mind is very useful in certain cases. But the thing is, it's important to use the mind properly. So we could almost say, I'm not sure if it's completely correct, something like the mind is a good servant but a bad master. I'm not sure if it completely applies, but it's the idea that the mind is useful. So the mind is useful to think. Like, for example, the mind is useful to question things. So the mind is useful to question Santa Claus. So the mind can be a useful tool for destruction of belief that are not supported by evidence, like Santa Claus. With my mind, I can think about Santa Claus and realize it doesn't make sense. However, I have to be a little bit careful not to use my mind to create another Santa Claus, to create a new belief. Now, this probably is not the right use of the mind. The word we use when we think about things, the word we use make a difference, because at the end our thinking is mostly made with words. So we think, we say, well, Santa Claus is dressed in red, he has his coat, he has those animals, I forgot the name, like deers, and we start to make our analysis. How come they can fly? Because they don't have wings. That doesn't make sense, because most animals that fly do have wings. Now we can say they are magic, but if they are magic, then why do they need to be deers? They could be anything. It could just be magic himself. So I mean, why does he even need the coach? So if he's magic, he could just close his eye like Goku, like in Dragon Ball. He just closes his eyes and poof, super powerful energy distributes the gift everywhere, etc., etc. So the mind is useful to notice inconsistencies. And that's a very, very good use of the mind, to drop beliefs, to drop stories. On the other hand, if we use the mind to fabricate more stories, more layers, then of course it can be problematic. So in the previous video, I discussed about the word deserve and the distortions it creates. So already the word should and could are distortions, because they assume this kind of imaginary reality that we compare the world with, and then we judge the world based on the imaginary reality. By the way, I forgot to say, so what I was saying is that the mind is useful as a tool to think and to process and to analyze data, which can lead to dropping beliefs, also in general to thinking more clear. It can be dangerous, potentially, to use the mind to build new beliefs, but not always, because if the belief is well supported by evidence or is coherent with our map of the world in general, it can also be effective to build a new belief. But we have to be extra careful when we build a new belief. But the key of most of the stuff I'm saying here is the problematic side of the mind is when it's used to judge. And judge is used here in a very specific context. It's the context of judging as in comparing to an imagined reality. So we compare reality that we observe directly with an imagined reality, a reality that hypothetically is better. So let's say we compare this reality with a reality where Santa Claus exists, and we say, oh, it would be better if there was Santa Claus. So this is the issue. Let's say the mind as a tool for judgment is a problem. It's not effective, it's dysfunctional, because this judgment is not based on anything except a projected imagined reality, and we compare our reality with this projected imagined reality. So the case of deserve is tricky, because it feels intuitively as if it makes sense, but in the previous video we deconstructed why it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because it assumes like a prerequisite that is oversimplified. So it's say people that work hard should or deserve to succeed. The problem is that it's not enough to work hard to succeed. You have to work hard, be lucky, do the right things, go in the right direction, have the right support, know the right people, be lucky, blah, 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 blah. And of course, if you add all those things, even intuitively, it's kind of obvious that it doesn't make sense anymore, because you're like, well, yeah, it is obvious. I mean, if you do this, then this, you don't have to say deserve or should, you just say then. But when you oversimplify, then you use deserve, but in reality it's wrong because it's oversimplified and working hard is not enough. So we understand now that the idea of the word deserving is basically an oversimplification of a prerequisite. So when we use the word deserve, it's always wrong. And we have a funny word, a funny joke, which is to say the plane flies because it deserves to fly. This could be a reminder. It's nice, it's funny. We can use it as a reminder. Every time we or someone else use the word deserve, we can think of that joke. A plane flies because it deserves to fly, to remember that it doesn't make any sense. Now let's look at the word just. The word just is also tricky, similar to the word deserve. How does it work? What exactly is the process in the word just, which again is, so we have tangible things you can put in a box, like cat, dog, duck, bottle, whatever. Then we have concepts, and some concepts are useful, some are not useful. So let's say the concept of big and small is useful. The concept of deserve is not. The concept of just is not. So let's look at just. So let's take an example of just. For example, someone could have said, you just had to buy Bitcoin. Someone makes a lot of effort, works very hard, he build a business, everything, and he becomes a millionaire. And someone say, you could just have bought Bitcoin. And someone say, wow, I worked so hard for like all those years to build that business, to sell my product, to hire people, deal with countless problems, investors, etc. And all I had to do is just buy Bitcoin? Shit, like I'm stupid. But is it? So what exactly just means? Well, let's try to remove it first. We can say you could have bought Bitcoin instead. You worked so hard to set up your business, to become a billionaire. You could have bought Bitcoin. Already we should start to be allergic to the word could by now, because we realize that there is not this alternative imagined reality. We understand that from the Big Bang onward, it's cause, effect. And hey, for some people it happened, for some it didn't happen. There is no could, there is no should. But in this case, it's could. There is no could, there is no alternate reality where something has happened differently. Or at least, maybe there is, but as far as we know, there isn't. If we believe in causality as we know it now, there is not. Now, maybe one day physics will discover that there are parallel universes and whatever, but we will still not know what determines if we end up experiencing one or the other. So to us, it may still end up being, let's say, outside of our control, whatever our control means. But still, the point is, the idea of could have is a story. So if you didn't buy Bitcoin, it's not really that you could have bought Bitcoin. It's like there is the reality which you didn't buy Bitcoin, and then there is the story you tell yourself that you could have bought Bitcoin. It's very similar to breaking your leg. So it's like you broke your leg, this is the reality, and you say, I broke my leg, and that's objective, you broke your leg. But when you say, I could have not broken my leg, then it's a fabrication. It's a product of the imagination. So now you're just fabricating a story with your imagination of an alternative reality. Now it doesn't matter. Maybe there is a parallel universe where you didn't break your leg, but you're not there. You're in this one where you broke your leg. So it doesn't really matter if there is a parallel one. The point is, in this universe where you broke your leg, you're telling yourself a story that you could have not broken your leg, but you did break your leg. So in some way, when someone say you could have bought Bitcoin, you could answer, well, but I didn't. And in some way, maybe there is, and the fact that you could have bought Bitcoin is just imagination. So you superimpose the imagined reality of buying Bitcoin on top of the current reality where you did not buy Bitcoin, and you say, oh, I should have bought Bitcoin. But again, should have is also imagined reality. So again, this is judgment. This is the mind judging, projecting an imagined reality, superimposing it as an extra layer on the current reality, and then judging the imagined reality with the current reality and saying the imagined reality is better. And so it makes you feel bad, it makes you suffer, because you look at things and they look bad. But they look bad only because in your imagined reality they look better. So what is just? So you could just have bought Bitcoin. So we don't say you could have bought Bitcoin, because we kind of realize that it doesn't make sense. It's just projecting an alternative reality. But someone could say you could just have bought Bitcoin. And this just makes it somewhat even more painful, because it's like, what? 10 years of work to build my business, blah, 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 and I could just have bought Bitcoin, just put $100 in Bitcoin at, let's say, $1, and maybe I will have more money now than all this effort. What is exactly this just word? What is it hiding? Deserving is a word that basically hides an oversimplification. Deserving. And just is a word that is basically a compression. So the word just means a lot more than just. It's a word that needs to be expanded. So when someone says just, I would say just is one of the most dangerous words, but there are many other very dangerous words. Yeah. So just is a word that should never be used because it always produces a distortion of the mind. So when you use just, you're compressing a longer sentence that we are going to look at. You're compressing a longer sentence and you're of course distorting everything, and you end up with a completely false belief. So when you say you could just have bought Bitcoin, you're implying that it's easy. It's like saying, well, you could just have made Tesla, or you could just have made Amazon or Microsoft. Now, we don't really say that because it seems a little bit more dumb. It's like we clearly understand that it's not easy to build a large corporation. So we will usually not say just. But some people could say it. Some people could say, well, you just had to raise a lot of money. You just had to know the right people. You just had to have the right connection. Some people could say that. But let's look at the example of Bitcoin, because I think it's very interesting because it really shows how dangerous the just word can be. So what does it mean? Just bought Bitcoin. Well, let's try to expand the word just by understand its meaning. So buying Bitcoin is of course a risk, because when it was very cheap, it was risky. No one believed it. So if no one believes in something and you're the only one that believes, by definition, it is risky. So first of all, there is a component of risk. So people that bought Bitcoin took a risk. Now, if you buy Bitcoin, let's say at $1, and you buy, let's say, $100, the risk is not just the $100, because when you put $100, yes, you're risking $100. But let's say now Bitcoin goes to $10. So now your portfolio is worth $1,000. So that's your risk, because you could always sell now and take home $1,000, and someone else is going to buy your risk. You put $100 in Bitcoin when it's $1. It goes to $1,000, so you made 10 times your money. Now you have $1,000. Now you can hold your risk, you can sell your risk by taking cash, and someone else can buy your risk. Now if you hold your risk, you're effectively risking $1,000, so it doesn't matter how much you paid. The point is how much you're risking. You're risking whatever the value of the portfolio is at a given point in time, because you could sell and take $1,000. So you are deciding to hold and not to sell. Now let's say it goes to $100. Now you have $10,000. And then again, you have $100,000. You have $1 million. Now you're taking a huge risk. You're risking $1 million on a speculative asset that still a lot of people don't believe in. A lot of people say it's useless, it will go to zero, blah, 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 blah. And by the way, I'm not endorsing Bitcoin in this video. I'm just using it as an example. So at some point you're risking $1 million, and then maybe you may be risking $10 million, $100 million, $1 billion, whatever. So it doesn't matter that you bought at $100. As it goes up, your risk increases. So then already the just word was hiding a component of risk. Is it hiding something else? Well, yes, because it's also hiding the outcome. So turned out that Bitcoin was successful. Was it guaranteed on day one? Of course not. It's like when you spin the roulette, let's say you bet on the red and the red comes out. Yes, you're lucky, you double your money. But was it guaranteed? Well, no, there was a 50% chance. There was another 50% chance that you would have lost your money. So you got lucky. So you took a risk and you got lucky. With the roulette, you put your money on red or black, you spin, 50% chance. If you're lucky, you double. If you're not lucky, you lose. Bitcoin or any other investment is really the same. You risk a certain amount of money on something, then you wait, and if you're lucky, it's a lot more. If you're unlucky, you lose it. So now we can expand just a little bit more, and we can see that it implies, at least in the case of Bitcoin, but it's a useful example that we can probably use for many other things. So when you say just buy Bitcoin, you could say, well, you could have took a risk by buying Bitcoin and got lucky and won. Now look how different it sounds from you could just have bought Bitcoin as if there was no risk involved and it was guaranteed to succeed. When you use the word just, when you expand the word just, then it's like you could have took a risk by buying Bitcoin, so risk, and got lucky, and then you make money. But you had to take a risk. Now that's huge. Most people don't want to take a risk. You had to be lucky. That doesn't always happen all the time. Often it doesn't happen. You can very well get unlucky and you lose, even if you took a risk. So it's not that taking risk is always rewarded. It can be punished. Sometimes you lose. So now the sentence, you could just have bought Bitcoin or just bought Bitcoin, as a comparison to the person who invested 10 years of his life and effort and maybe money and like countless nights, etc., to build a business. And he say, oh, I could just have bought Bitcoin. Well, now it feels different because it's like, well, but I built this business slowly and over time and I got constant validation. I never really invested lots of money. So maybe there was not so much risk. If the business was profitable from day one and maybe no one was willing to buy the business, so it's not that there was the element of risk that you could sell your business. Maybe no one wanted to buy it. So you were working and it was making money and you were working more, it was making more money. So maybe you didn't take a risk or very limited risk, or you had no choice in taking the risk because maybe at some point you have to take a risk in your business, but you have no choice. Whereas in Bitcoin, you could always have sold. You could always have got rid of the risk. With your business, maybe there are no buyers and maybe some risk you're forced to take. So effectively, in the other case of the business, maybe you didn't really take a risk. You started small, you always were profitable, you start maybe as a consultant, then you hire more people, then you build a product, always being profitable. Maybe you were taking no risk after all. Yes, you put effort, but maybe you were taking no risk. And then maybe luck didn't matter so much. I mean, if you were constantly in control and your customer base was constantly increasing and you were always profitable and always getting new customers, maybe luck was not so important. So, well, now it's clear why you had to compensate, let's say, in order to achieve the same result to become a millionaire by building your business versus becoming a millionaire by buying Bitcoin, by just buying Bitcoin. Well, now it starts to make sense why you had to put all the extra effort. Because you didn't take the risk and there was no need to be lucky. So the just word, now it starts to be more obvious how problematic it is. It hides a lot of stuff. It's like a black box. It hides the fact that there was a lot of risk. It hides the fact that you had to be very lucky. But when we use just, we forget about this. So just is a tricky word, and it's a word that when we hear it, we always need to expand it and say, what is hiding behind the word just? How do I expand the word just? And in this case, for an investment, you could just have bought Nvidia stock. Well, it's hiding the risk and the important element of chance. So if you expand just, it becomes, I could have took a risk by buying Bitcoin and holding it and be lucky. That's what it means, just buy Bitcoin. It means take a risk, buy Bitcoin, be lucky. Not everyone will take the risk and not everyone will be lucky. Whereas just implies that it's easy, that it's unavoidable, that everyone can do it.